The senator from the Mat-Su and Valdez area, as he was speaking, reminded me of a favorite story that I have. It's a story in ancient history, and it's a favorite of mine, and it's about Alexander the Great when he went to Mali. And Alexander and his men had left Macedonia years before, and they had moved south. They'd taken over Persia, taken over most of the known world, and they were moving eastward to India. When they got to India, they kind of took a hard right and began to move south down the west coast of India. And they came to a fortified city called Mali. Something really interesting happened there, and that was his men, the men who had been so loyal to him, went into mutiny. And they said, we're just not fighting anymore. And Alexander argued and argued with these fellows for a while, and then in an amazingly courageous act, and an act of leadership that I think most couldn't even imagine, he walks away from his mutinous people. He walks up to the city of Mali, climbs the ladder, and starts fighting the guys up on the wall by himself. His people were in shock, and his generals, they just couldn't be outdone like that. I mean, that was an act of courage that simply couldn't be left unmatched. And they ran to protect him. They climbed the walls. And then the men who were about to mutiny, they themselves got in a race. Nobody wanted to be in second place to get to the walls of Mali. By this time, Alexander turned around and looked at him. Actually, this is before they took off for the wall. He looked at him and jumped down into the city. So his generals went after him. They went down there, and they're fighting away. And they have the city of Mali attacking about 4 or 5 guys. Out of one of the miller's shacks there, a fellow came up and hit Alexander in the head and almost killed him, and he was wounded. And another one of his generals took, and this is where the legend is just amazing. You can't write stuff like this. They had one of the shields from Troy. When they had gone through there, they actually got the shields from Troy, of course, which were very sacred to them. And he was protecting what they thought maybe was the dead body of Alexander when all the men crashed through the gate, and then they finally took the city of Mali. Okay, so what does this have to do with our president and the actions recently? Times call for courage and leadership. And that man, that Alexander, he knew who he was. He knew his place in the world and with his men. And if you flash forward to 1776, as one of the previous speakers did, those people knew their place. Most of the leadership to push back at a despot came from the legislators. The state houses, the House of Burgess, and like that in Maryland. So I would encourage you all to begin to look at yourselves in more historical terms. We are, the first shots have been fired on the war against Alaska. They're shots in the form of legal measures and executive orders and those kinds of things. Nobody's going to actually draw blood on this. But the first shots in this war have been fired. They've been fired many, many times. And we need to understand who we are. We aren't elected to say, "Mother, may I?" And that's what we've done over time, is say, they tell us we can't do something, we don't do it because we are too busy filing lawsuits. And ultimately somebody says, you didn't say, "Mother, may I?" You can't build that legal enterprise. You can't build that dam. You can't do whatever it is they say we can't do. So I'm just encouraging us to kind of take out of the page book of Alexander. I'm certainly not asking anyone to jump down into a city of hostiles, but take that courageous step. We don't even know what it is, by the way. I'm talking pretty general terms here. But we need to take a courageous step. We need to do something, and it isn't along the lines of more lawsuits. I like some of the things the governor has been saying. I like some of the things the previous speaker from Mat-Su has been saying. We have to do something and take a page from our president's playbook. What he does is he says, you know what, this isn't legal. I'm just going to do it and let them stop me. And he advances his agenda. an inch at a time, a foot at a time, a mile at a time, because he takes action and then he says, let him stop me. Generally, he's not stopped because people don't have courage, because they don't understand their position in all of this in history. Our founding fathers understood that. I'm not suggesting that we grab our 30-06s and go to that kind of war, but they would have a long time ago. This thing would have been settled back in the 50s or 60s, really. Those guys wouldn't have taken this. So I get to the point of hashtags. I was handed this as I got down here by the daughter of a friend. They are putting together a technological response to this. Again, not a horribly courageous act, but it's something we should all think about doing. They're creating a platform with a message. It's hashtag, this is our Alaska. And when you use the hashtag, this is our Alaska, your messages, photos, press releases, etc., will go to the platform, and then it will be sent out to communicate. They're really hoping that about 100,000 people will join in on this. And I would really encourage you to do it. I honestly don't know how to do it. I'm going to go back and ask my staff, how do I write this little thing? I'll figure it out then. But anyway, I just encourage us all. We don't know what it is we need to do yet, but what we've done in the past has been too weak. It kind of is in the category of Mother May I. I'm tired of saying Mother May I. I don't know what it means to be a senator from the interior in an environment like this, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to encourage everyone to start looking at yourself in slightly different terms. This is America. We sit on a timeline of history. Where do we fit in this timeline? How do we impact the world that we were in? How do we impact our time? This is our time, and it's time to push back.